You're streaming CBS News Bay Area.
Thanks for joining us this Thursday. I'm Ann Makovic, and here's a look at some of our news headlines this morning. Some breaking news in the manhunt for the shooter who killed conservative activist Charlie Kirk. The FBI in Salt Lake City has just released these photos of a person of interest. They're asking for the public for help identifying this person, whom they say is college-aged. Earlier today, the Utah Public Safety Commissioner said law enforcement has good video footage of the suspect. Police say they have recovered the weapon used in yesterday's killing, a high-powered bolt-action rifle. Police say a single shot came from a rooftop about 200 yards away as Kirk was speaking to a crowd of about 3,000 people at Utah Valley University. Kirk was a leading voice for young conservative voters and a supporter of President Trump. In East Oakland, 2 people were killed, 4 others injured after a shootout inside a pawn shop. Happened at Cash for Gold on International Boulevard near 71st Avenue last night. Police say that several armed men went into the store just before 7:45, and a source tells us that they tried to rob the store but then got into a gun battle with the employees. 2 suspects were killed, 3 other suspects and an employee were wounded. The nation marking 24 years since the 9/11 terror attacks killed nearly 3,000 people and changed the country. In San Francisco today, fire officials honored the lives of the first responders and civilians who died in the attacks. Mayor Daniel Lurie said he was in New York when the planes hit the Twin Towers.
I was taking a subway down to my 4th day of work, and I got out on Broadway Street, and the first plane had just hit, and I saw people falling.
Wow. 49er head coach Kyle Shanahan, meantime, says that Brock Purdy is a long shot to play this weekend against the Saints, and he could be out for several weeks. Purdy suffered toe and shoulder injuries in the season opener against the Seahawks. According to the NFL Network, Purdy is dealing with some sort of variant of turf toe that is expected to keep him out for between 2 and 5 weeks. That means backup Mac Jones likely to get the start this Sunday against the Saints. All right, now let's get a check on our first alert forecast. Taking a look from our Mount Diablo camera, the humid weather is starting to move out, and soon a warm-up will be moving in. Here's meteorologist Jessica Birch.
It's another cool day for us today here in the Bay Area with daytime highs sitting in the 70s from wine country all the way down into the Santa Clara Valley. We have some exceptions to that, of course. Some 80s returning into the forecast in places like Concord and Antioch, 60s along the coast closer to Half Moon Bay. But if you're in San Francisco and you pass the Bay Bridge over in Oakland, temperatures are pretty much the exact same, right? Now, as we head into the next few days, we're going to start seeing a bit of a warm up. That area of low pressure that brought in some rainier skies earlier this week, some cloudier conditions and higher relative humidity, it's slowly starting to move its way off into the east. So we're still dealing with cloudy skies. Those leftover clouds from that system will continue to fill the bay all throughout the afternoon hours, breaking apart in our inland spots throughout the evening hours too. But we'll get that coastal fog each day as we head into this weekend's forecast before a big warm up into next week. At the same time, surface level winds, they're pretty light this morning, but they do start to get a bit gustier closer to San Francisco and all along that coast into the evening hours tonight. From Bodega Bay down into San Francisco, we can see up to around 25-mile-per-hour wind gust, about 20 miles per hour closer to our inland spots. And speaking of our inland areas, let's talk about this warm up, because now that area of low pressure is removing itself, we're starting to see high pressure fill in, and that warms us up, it dries us up. We'll see sunnier skies, lower relative humidity, and warm temperatures as early as next Monday and Tuesday. I mean, gosh, we're talking about 90s. And that's the case as we head into mid next week too. So from wine country down into the East Bay and down into the Santa Clara Valley, we are in for some warm summer-like weather right around the corner. And you make your way over in the Bay, well, we're getting that same warm up too. 70s for now, that'll stay constant for a bit, but we will see a return to the 80s in places like Oakland and San Francisco heading into mid next week.
More now on the deadly shooting of conservative activist Charlie Kirk. It happened right as Kirk was fielding a question about gun violence. Investigators say they do have good video footage of the killer. Law enforcement sources tell CBS News the single shot was likely fired from the roof of a nearby building. That shooting happening during an event that Kirk was hosting at Utah Valley University. And today, authorities say they have made some breakthroughs in the investigation.
We were able to track the movements of the shooter Starting at 11:52 a.m., the subject arrived on campus, shortly away from campus. We have tracked his movements onto the campus, through the stairwells, up to the roof, across the roof to a shooting location. After the shooting, we were able to track his movements as he moved to the other side of the building, jumped off of the building, and fled off of the campus and into a neighborhood.
2 people were detained right after the shooting. Investigators say they determined both had nothing to do with the attack. Kirk was 31 years old. He leaves behind a wife and 2 children. This is just the latest in a string of attacks against political figures over the past several years. Kenny Choi spoke with a leading researcher on gun violence and has more on the troubling political climate across the country.
From the assassination attempts of President Trump during the 2024 campaign to June of this year, when 2 Minnesota lawmakers were shot and killed, high-profile incidents of political violence in the country have become prevalent.
The incidents are an outcome, if you will, of an increased level of polarization in the United States, of pro-violence rhetoric on the part of elected officials.
Dr. Garen Wintemute is director of the UC Davis Violence Prevention Research Program.
The vast majority of Americans wholly reject political violence as a way of resolving our disputes.
Wintemute and researchers have studied data and conducted national surveys on political violence since 2022. In those annual surveys, about 30% of adults believe that physical violence is usually or always justified to advance at least one political purpose.
That kind of thinking out in the public can create a climate of acceptance for violence that makes it easier for violence to happen.
San Mateo Board of Supervisor and former Congresswoman Jackie Speer, who was shot 5 times during the 1978 Jonestown tragedy, spoke about the shooting death of conservative activist Charlie Kirk.
He was a young man with a point of view that had a lot of followers, and now he's been silenced. And it's more than a tragedy. It is a violation of all the principles that this country is based on.
Dr. Wintemute cautions against this type of violence becoming commonplace.
We have got to reverse that climate of acceptance. We simply have to create a climate in the United States, a culture in the United States that rejects violence.
Charlie Kirk and his conservative group Turning Point USA appeared at San Francisco State University just this past May. It was part of a tour of college campuses around the country. He hosted a Prove Me Wrong table, as he often did, inviting people in the audience with opposite views to debate him. It drew hundreds of people, including some protesters, you might imagine. Kirk also hosted a similar event at UC Berkeley in 2019. It was hosted indoors, but there were protesters outside and even an altercation. We spoke with the president of UC Berkeley's college Republicans, who say the political divide has gotten out of control.
It's just going to keep getting worse. I don't see any path where this is going to be less bad in 5 years, at least not now. Hopefully this can be like a turning point for the United States.
Stay with us for updates on this developing story on air on our website, kpix.com, and streaming on the free CBS News app. Today marks 24 years since the 9/11 terror attacks. Memorial events are being held nationwide today. Nearly 3,000 people lost their lives on September 11th, 2001, when hijackers crashed planes into the World Trade Center, the Pentagon, and a field in Pennsylvania. This morning, a ceremony took place at the National Pentagon Memorial in Arlington, near Washington, D.C. President Trump and First Lady Melania Trump appeared at the Pentagon. That is where American Airlines Flight 77 crashed on 9/11, killing 184 people. The memorial park opened back in 2008, 7 years after the terror attack. Another commemoration took place at Ground Zero in New York City. That is the site in Lower Manhattan where the Twin Towers of the Trade Center once stood. And this is a look at the United Flight 93 Memorial in Pennsylvania. That flight was bound for SFO. All 40 passengers and crew members died. Back here in the Bay Area, first responders in San Francisco are honoring the victims of 9/11. Our Veronica Macias reports from the Public Safety Building on 3rd Street.
A beautiful and a solemn moment during this remembrance ceremony here at the Public Safety Center in San Francisco. San Francisco's top leaders remembering what it was like on that tragic day, like the mayor himself, who recalls the confusion and the fear after the attack, seeing people falling from a building 24 years ago when he worked in New York City. Fire departments across the nation today honoring the lives lost, paying homage with remembrance ceremonies. We had the ringing of the bell at 6:59, the moment the South Tower collapsed, and the national anthem sang here. The flags lowered at half-staff, and then there was a moment of silence before the names were read. Nearly 3,000 people perished in that tragic day. In pretty much all the tributes this morning, we heard the reminder, let's never forget and keep our promise to keep each other safe. America coming together in some of the most extraordinary ways, says the mayor. And on this 9/11, on the heels of another tragedy in the political world for the nation, the mayor reminding us of the grace, sympathy, and kindness that is needed right now.
My heart goes out to the family, and there's no place for political violence in this country. It is horrific, it is reprehensible. And we need to give each other grace. We need to listen to each other. We need to talk to each other.
During the remembrance ceremony, we also heard in the tributes mention of the lives lost after the attacks. So many people, an estimated 7,000, who have lost their lives from illness after breathing toxic dust at Ground Zero. That's according to the World Trade Center Health Program.
Still ahead here on CBS News Bay Area. State and South Bay Democrats pushing to ban law enforcement from covering their faces. We're going to meet a legal immigrant in San Jose who says those masks create even more chaos and fear in his community.
Feels like a knot in my belly. Like every time that even when I get there and it's not them.
Plus, Oakland could become the latest Bay Area city to aggressively step up encampment sweeps, the personal plea from a city council member.
We're starting to warm up as we head into the next couple days. Still sitting in the low 80s this afternoon throughout most our inland spots, and upper 70s widespread from the South Bay up into the North Bay. We're going to start seeing a return to the upper 80s and lower 90s heading into this weekend's forecast. And as early as next week, we're jumping all the way up into the mid and upper 90s, widespread from the East Bay down into the Santa Clara Valley. Now along the bay, so closer to San Francisco and Oakland, we'll also get that warm up too, but that's only going to jump us up into the 80s with sunnier skies right around the corner.
New information on yesterday's school shooting in Colorado. Police say a boy shot several classmates and then killed himself. Video shows students fleeing the scene and ringing a doorbell at a home nearby. Others were on lockdown at Evergreen High School near Denver. The sheriff's office says the gunman opened fire with a revolver. 2 students were wounded, one of them in critical condition.
Me and like 30 other students ran to the band room. It was like one of the closest rooms, and we hid right around the door corner where they told us to hide. And we waited there for a few minutes. And then there's a door to the outside on the other side of the band room from where we were hiding. There's a guy there. He yelled some things, and he shot at us at least twice.
Police are still searching for a motive. We have learned the identities of all 6 people killed in a suspected DUI crash in Napa County. They were Aaron Ruiz, Baymar Rodriguez, Demetrio Francisco, Pedro Gomez, Loretta Hernandez, and Fernando Silverio. They were farm workers from the Stockton area. A crash happened Sunday along Pope Valley Road when a minivan went off the road and rammed into a tree. The driver survived. He is identified as Noberto Celerino. He is facing 6 counts of murder. Authorities say he has 3 DUI convictions and was on probation at the time of the crash. Police investigating a stabbing in San Francisco that happened at Junipero Serra and Ocean Avenue near Commodore Sloat Elementary School. This is video from Citizen app. We're told the victim was rushed to the hospital with life-threatening injuries yesterday afternoon. We don't know much about the circumstances. Police haven't said anything yet about a suspect or the person who was injured, but we're told that nobody has been arrested. In Georgia, more than 300 South Koreans detained by federal agents in an immigration raid are flying to South Korea from Atlanta. That raid happening Friday at a Hyundai plant. ICE said they were suspected of living and working in the U.S. illegally.
They have in their contracts that they require, Georgia's an E-Verify state, so they require E-Verify of the contractor. They audit that with their contractors. I think folks realize if there's something happens, even though it's a third party, it's a third party working for you, and you'll take some responsibility and accountability.
The chartered flights are expected to land in South Korea tomorrow afternoon. Immigration raids across the state and the country have continued to cause outcries, especially because ICE agents often cover their faces with masks. And now Democrats across California are pushing to ban law enforcement from wearing those masks. One proposal was just approved unanimously by the San Jose City Council's Rules Committee, hours after city leaders rallied in front of City Hall's rotunda to advocate for that ban. They say it's necessary for people to feel safe. Our Lauren Toms explains.
Not a day goes by that Misraim Mendoza isn't carrying his green card, but it wasn't always that way.
If you look like me, you speak like me, get ready to show you green card.
He's a legal immigrant from Mexico, now advocating for the rights of undocumented residents in the South Bay. But as federal immigration agents step up arrests, often wearing masks, Mendoza says it takes a physical toll.
It feels like like a knot in my belly. Like every time that even when I get there and it's not them and it's the police, it's just like, it's very depressing, like the way we going.
Masked officers are exactly what San Jose leaders want to prevent. They've introduced a new measure that would prohibit ICE agents from masking up in the city.
ICE has the responsibility of enforcing our immigration laws, but that does not and should not require that they violate anyone's constitutional rights.
The debate has reached Sacramento, where Senator Scott Wiener is pushing the No Secret Police Act to ban face coverings for federal and local law enforcement.
We're not trying to change how normal policing works. We want that to continue. But people running around wearing ski masks and grabbing people, throwing them into unmarked cars, that's not normal. That is fascism. And it's terrifying, and it must stop.
The bill makes some exceptions for SWAT teams and undercover assignments, and it would not apply to the CHP. But police associations say it goes too far. Brian Marvel with the Peace Officers Research Association argues local officers are being punished for a federal fight.
I think by and large, if you look at most of your local law enforcement officers that are out there working hard every day to protect their communities, they're not wearing masks. Again, I want to reiterate, this is about the feds and not about the locals. And we're unfortunately having been put in the middle.
But the state's authority on banning masks for ICE agents could be limited under the U.S. Constitution's Supremacy Clause, which could trigger legal challenges.
Once they're excluded from this bill is now just for local officers.
Still, for Mendoza, the fight isn't about legal theory.
We feel like being hunted, you know, and this is a life-threatening matter.
Well, that state bill comes with some penalties for offending officers. They could be charged with misdemeanors or fined up to $10,000. The Assembly passed it today. Now it is working its way through the state Senate. It has to be approved by the end of the week. That is when the legislative year ends. Back in June, dozens of congressional Democrats introduced a similar bill in the House of Representatives, but that is almost certainly going nowhere as long as Republicans control Congress and the White House. President Trump's so-called border czar, Tom Homan, has said in the past that ICE agents need to wear masks to hide their identities because their families are being attacked. Still ahead here on CBS News Bay Area. Some leaders in Oakland proposing an aggressive crackdown against homeless encampments. Why the council member leading the charge says it is necessary, and how local advocates are pushing back. And the Golden State Valkyries closing out their regular season in Minnesota tonight, taking on the Lynx. Pre-game coverage starts at 4:30 p.m. on KPIX and streaming on Paramount+.
As we head into this weekend's forecast, high pressure starting to build its way in. We kicked off this week with this area of low pressure that brought in rainy skies at times, cloudy conditions, high relative humidity. Think about it. It has not really felt like a summer week here in the Bay this whole week. But as we head into this weekend, that starts to change. We turn the page into next week. We have sunnier skies as we head into Monday and Tuesday, and we will see warmer weather too. I mean, we're talking about 80s in the forecast in places like Oakland and San Francisco by next Tuesday and Wednesday. At the same time, we're sitting in the 80s already right now into their inland spots. Still cloudy skies today. We're going to ditch them as early as tomorrow. Relative humidity starts to drop a lot as we head into this weekend. We jump back into the 90s, even upper 90s as early as Tuesday and Wednesday. And a couple things that we're going to keep a close eye on as we head into next week now has to do with fire weather conditions, because if temperatures rise that quick, if relative humidity drops, and if we do see stronger winds, especially pushing in from our inland areas, we could see increased chances of fire weather conditions. So we'll monitor that closely as we head into next week. Today, though, not the case whatsoever.
Like many cities across the Bay Area, Oakland grappling with how to deal with homeless encampments. But changes in both the law and public sentiments are causing cities to rethink their approach. Oakland leaders gathered yesterday to hear a new proposal that is immediately drawing fire. John Ramos was there.
Is proposed as an alternative because
outside City Hall, homeless activists were protesting what was going on inside. At a special meeting of the city's Public Safety Committee, Councilmember Ken Houston was presenting his proposal for a new encampment abatement policy. But first, he displayed current pictures from his old neighborhood.
This is where I grew up. This is where my mother raised me. This is where I walked to school every day. Every day. And it did not look like this. We did not have to deal with this. Someone has to take a bold stand. We cannot continue to live in this condition, and we cannot continue to make individuals live in this condition.
Houston's plan would allow the city to close camps without notice. Offers of shelter would be made when available, but would not be required. Vehicles in violation of city code could be towed, and all sidewalk camps would be subject to closure. And finally, people who return and reestablish a camp within 60 days could be cited or arrested. The plan drew harsh criticism from homeless advocates at the meeting.
The solution to the problem is not to take their stuff and put them in jail. The solution to the problem is got to be humanistic. Oakland is not a city that wants to put its citizens in jail. We are not that Oakland. We are better than that. We can take care of our people, and we should, and we must.
The things that you guys want to take from us are the only things we own in this world, okay? We're not curbing. Yeah, we need help. But to throw us on the street with absolutely nothing has to feel like the jail for once, okay? We're trying to criminalize the moment when we can't afford to. It's really hard to sit there and watch people make decisions in a life that never experienced, who never walked in vain our sheep.
But Kevin Hester said his construction business was being heavily impacted by the encampment just outside his door.
We know this is a very difficult issue, but what is happening right now is not working, and something needs to change. I'm born and raised in Oakland. Our company is born and raised in Oakland. But if something doesn't change, we might be forced to move out.
There are warnings that Houston's plan, as currently written, could present a barrier to getting state and county housing funds. It appears to violate some requirements about providing advance notice and alternative locations for sleeping.
Suddenly, there's all this urgency after years of resistance and delays to plans that would actually house people. This policy will undermine our ability to work with the county and the state to do that. It threatens our access to the funding we need to provide that kind of housing.
Houston calls it a bold stand, and many agree with him that the current policy isn't working. But saying where the homeless can't live is the easy part. Figuring out where they can live is infinitely harder.
Well, Houston says his plan is in line with last year's Supreme Court ruling that found that cities do have the authority to prohibit camping and sleeping on public property. Oakland's full city council will address this matter later this month. Coming up here on CBS News Bay Area, the history of 9/11 written on the walls of this church, rebuilt at the heart of Ground Zero. We're heading to New York City for more on how it's honoring victims and survivors.
You're streaming CBS News Bay Area.
Thanks for staying with us. I'm Ann Magovic, and here is another look at our news headlines. In the manhunt for the shooter who killed conservative activist Charlie Kirk, the FBI in Salt Lake City just released these photos of a person of interest. They're asking the public for help identifying this person. Kirk was shot and killed yesterday while speaking to a crowd of people at Utah Valley University. Police say they have recovered the weapon used in yesterday's killing, a high-powered bolt-action rifle. Investigators have not identified that suspect, but say that person is college-aged. In East Oakland, 2 people were killed, 4 others injured after a shootout inside a pawn shop. Happened at Cash for Gold on International Boulevard near 71st Avenue last night. Police say several armed men went into the store just before 7:45, and a source tells us they tried to rob the store, then got into a gun battle with the employees. 2 suspects were killed, 3 other suspects and an employee were injured. The nation marking 24 years since the 9/11 terror attacks. Nearly 3,000 people died on September 11th, 2001, when hijackers crashed planes into the World Trade Center, the Pentagon, and a field in Pennsylvania. In San Francisco today, fire officials honored the lives of the first responders and civilians who died in the attacks. All right, let's get another check on our first alert forecast now with meteorologist Jessica Birch.
It's another cool day for us today here in the Bay Area with daytime highs sitting in the 70s from wine country all the way down into the Santa Clara Valley. We have some exceptions to that, of course. Some 80s returning into the forecast in places like Concord and Antioch, 60s along the coast closer to Half Moon Bay. But if you're in San Francisco and you pass the Bay Bridge over in Oakland, temperatures are pretty much the exact same, right? Now, as we head into the next few days, we're going to start seeing a bit of a warm up. That area of low pressure that brought in some rainier skies earlier this week, some cloudier conditions and higher relative humidity, it's slowly starting to move its way off into the east. So we're still dealing with cloudy skies. Those leftover clouds from that system will continue to fill the bay all throughout the afternoon hours, breaking apart in our inland spots throughout the evening hours too. But we'll get that coastal fog each day as we head into this weekend's forecast before a big warm up into next week. At the same time, surface level winds, they're pretty light this morning, but they do start to get a bit gustier closer to San Francisco and all along that coast into the evening hours tonight. From Bodega Bay down into San Francisco, we can see up to around 25-mile-per-hour wind gust, about 20 miles per hour closer to our inland spots. And speaking of our inland areas, let's talk about this warm up, because now that that area of low pressure is removing itself, we're starting to see high pressure fill in, and that warms us up, it dries us up. We'll see sunnier skies, lower relative humidity, and warm temperatures as early as next Monday and Tuesday. I mean, gosh, we're talking about 90s. And that's the case as we head into mid next week too. So from wine country down into the East Bay and down into the Santa Clara Valley, we are in for some warm summer-like weather right around the corner. And you make your way over in the Bay, well, we're getting that same warm up too. 70s for now, that'll stay constant for a bit, but we will see a return to the 80s in places like Oakland and San Francisco heading into mid next week.
We are continuing our coverage of the deadly shooting of conservative activist Charlie Kirk. He was no stranger to the Bay Area. In fact, back in May, he hosted a discussion at San Francisco State, drawing hundreds of people, from supporters to curious onlookers and even protesters, of course. Kevin Coe spoke with Bay Area Republicans about Kirk's death, his influence on young conservatives, and their concerns about the political climate.
Welcome, everybody. Riley, welcome back to San Francisco State. You've been here before.
I have. This is my 3rd time. Certainly more pleasant than the past few times. So very, very excited.
All right, you know how it works. You come up, you could disagree, front of the line. We're going to have a lot of fun today, and maybe eventually we'll make San Francisco red.
It was just back in May that conservative activist Charlie Kirk joined former college swimmer Riley Gaines at San Francisco University. The stop was part of Kirk's The American Comeback Tour on college campuses, where he hosts a Prove Me Wrong table, inviting people in the audience with opposite views to debate him.
You didn't guess anything. You had a lady asking me what my belief was.
The event drew hundreds of people and a lot of law enforcement standing by to keep the peace as Kirk supporters got into a shouting match with protesters. Miguel Muniz, president of the Berkeley College Republicans, says Charlie Kirk was the face of young conservatism.
You never agree with anyone on everything, but you know, he brought me further to the right. He brought most of the people I know in the CRs, he brought us to the right.
His group was planning on hosting Kirk soon.
There was talk of him coming here in the coming weeks.
Kirk was shot and killed at Utah Valley University during one of his trademark college campus appearances.
It's unfortunate, but it's not unexpected. If you look at how our college Republicans are treated on campus, people screaming at people who are just tabling, people spitting at us.
During the 2020 election cycle, a man was punched while he was recruiting for a conservative group on campus. Neither man was a student, but Miguel says it's just one example of political tensions reaching a boiling point.
The language that they use, fascism, Nazism, attributing that to the right, it's like obviously Charlie Kirk's gonna get shot. And I just hope it's not one of my CRs that's gonna get assaulted next.
This was the attempted assassination of a presidential candidate, and today we had the assassination of Charlie Kirk, a non-elected American who chose to tell the truth no matter the cost or the risk.
For Contra Costa MAGA patriot Lisa Disbrow, Kirk's fatal shooting shows how dangerous the political climate can be. She's held nearly 100 demonstrations in Lafayette and is now even more motivated to keep going.
Someday soon there will be movies about Charlie Kirk. There will be songs, there will be books. People who never had an interest in the conservative movement will be asking the question, who was this guy? What did he stand for? What did he say? Just like Martin Luther King.
Back in Berkeley, Miguel says Kirk's death may weigh heavily for quite some time.
It's just gonna keep getting worse. I don't see any path where this is gonna be less bad in 5 years, at least not now. Hopefully this can be like a turning point for the United States. It's a shame, but I do think there's hope in the future. We're just not there right now at this moment, clearly not.
UC Berkeley has its own chapter of Kirk's nonprofit, Turning Point USA. The organization advocates for conservative politics on high school and college campuses. Some members told us they are still struggling to process what happened.
Really anxious. I had to skip multiple classes today. I just feel really anxious.
Charlie is one of the people, probably the main person who got me into politics. Charlie Kirk has had probably out of anyone the most influence in the Republican Party. He's the man who single-handedly got Donald Trump elected with the field operation that happened in the 2024 election.
Well, the UC Berkeley chapter of Turning Point USA was supposed to have their first meeting of the year last night. Instead, members had a memorial. Lawmakers on both sides of the aisle are condemning that attack. House Majority Leader Steve Scalise said this cannot be the new norm. He was shot at a congressional baseball game practice back in 2017.
Unfortunately, we've seen politics degrading, where some people feel if they disagree with you politically, they've got to try to go and eliminate those people.
Whether you're a Republican or Democrat or unaffiliated or just someone living their life, everybody must condemn this.
Every living president of both parties has denounced the attack. Former President Joe Biden saying there's no place in our country for this kind of violence and offering prayers for Kirk's wife and 2 young children. Again, stay with us for updates on this continuing story on air on our website, kpix.com, and streaming on the free CBS News app. Nearly a quarter century after the September 11th terror attacks, families are still grieving, healing, and telling the story of the lives that were lost. Bradley Blackburn takes us inside a church where that mission continues every day.
There are candles and music and Byzantine art found in every Greek Orthodox church. But look closer and you see this church is unlike any other.
The iconography here is what gives the building its life, its flesh and bones.
3 icons depict the people and history of September 11th inside the St. Nicholas Greek Orthodox Church and Shrine. Today, it stands in the shadow of One World Trade Center. 24 years ago, the collapse of the Twin Towers reduced it to rubble.
This area is so beautiful now.
It is. And Thula Katsimatidis helped lead the mission to rebuild it. Her brother John worshipped at St. Nicholas and worked in the World Trade Center. On 9/11, he was trapped on the 104th floor of the North Tower and died at age 31.
I knew that John's spirit would be here.
The gleaming marble in the new house of worship comes from the quarry that supplied stone for the Parthenon. The sacred images were hand-painted by a Mount Athos monk. Icons are central to Greek Orthodox faith, serving as a bridge to the divine.
It's just right over my head.
And they always tell stories.
The reason that is my favorite icon is because I feel like St. Nicholas has taken care of all the 9/11 victims, that somehow in that tragedy that St. Nicholas was there to lift them up and take them to heaven.
A spiritual space that's uniquely Greek, but speaks to people of all faiths.
It's for the entire city. For the entire city, for the entire world.
Finding hope and healing in a church at the heart of Ground Zero.
St. Nicholas Church reopened officially in 2022, and since then they estimate 1 million people from around the world have visited. Coming up next here on CBS News Bay Area, we are sitting down with a former Fox News host, business owner, and Stanford lecturer who wants to become your next governor.
The number one thing that's going wrong in California, the number one reason people are leaving our beautiful state, it's the cost of housing.
How he plans to make sure future generations can chase the California dream. Plus,
they lost their son 4 years ago in a drowning. What a husband and wife team are doing to promote ocean safety along the California coast.
We're starting to warm up as we head into the next couple days. Still sitting in the low 80s this afternoon throughout most our inland spots, and upper 70s widespread from the South Bay up into the North Bay. We're going to start seeing a return of the upper 80s and lower 90s heading into this weekend's forecast. And as early as next week, we're jumping all the way up into the mid and upper 90s, widespread from the East Bay down into the Santa Clara Valley. Now along the bay, so closer to San Francisco and Oakland, we'll also get that warm up too, but that's only going to jump us up into the 80s with sunnier skies right around the corner.
all this week, CBS News California Investigates is introducing you to the people who want to be our next governor. California correspondent Julie Watts sitting down with 11 candidates who have officially entered the race so far.
I was senior advisor to the Prime Minister of the UK, David Cameron. My wife had a big job at one of the big tech companies, in fact, at Google. So we both had these big jobs. When our second son was born, we thought for our family sanity, let's move to California to be closer to my wife's job.
Each day, Julie bringing us one question with one candidate to give some early insight into who they are and why they want to be our next governor. Today, she sits down with Steve Hilton.
Steve Hilton is one of the Republicans running to replace California Governor Gavin Newsom when he terms out next year. He lives in Atherton, California, and describes himself as a public policy expert, author, and founder. Hilton was previously senior advisor to UK Prime Minister David Cameron, as well as a Fox News host, business owner, and Stanford lecturer. He says he's running for governor because, quote, I love this state so much and want the beautiful promise of the California dream to be there for my kids and everyone else's too.
We sat down with each candidate for an in-depth interview covering all the issues that matter to you. But we began by asking what they think our current governor and legislature did right and what they would have done differently. That's one question with Steve Hilton.
The thing he's done that I most strongly agree with, and it's something that I actually argued for in a book that I wrote 10 years ago called More Human, is very decisively acting to stop smartphones being used in schools. It's an incredibly important move. We've got massive problems in education as it is. The schools are not performing like we want. We don't need those distractions. I'll show you what I would recommend, which is the phone that I have, which is a good old-fashioned flip phone.
Okay, so the other half of that question is, what's one thing in your opinion that was a misstep?
Look, I've got a long list of things that I would have done differently if I was the governor. I think, you know, the number one thing that's going wrong in California, the number one reason people are leaving our beautiful state, it's the cost of housing. It's the number one reason. The idea that you could own your own home is now just a fantasy for so many young people. Despite talking about it a lot, you see that in the legislature in Sacramento. They say, yeah, we've got to fix our housing crisis. They really haven't done it. They haven't done anything. We've got the highest housing costs in the whole country. We've got the lowest home ownership in the whole country. And so I think that's been a massive missed opportunity.
How do you fix it?
Well, let's go into the reasons why we got such high housing costs. Number one, environmental regulations, which make the cost of building much higher in California. That is directly as the result of unnecessary regulations that make the cost go up. Then you've got the taxes on housing. People don't understand that we have these things called impact fees in California. The Berkeley Center on Housing, the Terman Center, have estimated that up to 20% of the cost of a new house are taxes. Now that's totally avoidable. We don't have to charge these taxes. We already pay the highest taxes in the whole country.
So how do you fund the programs that those taxes are funding?
Well, we have to cut spending in California. They've doubled the budget. Is everything twice as good? Most people would say things have gotten worse.
Well, Julie moderated the California Governor's Forum this week, hosted by Apapa and Sacramento State. You can watch that full forum on our website, kpix.com, or on our YouTube channel. Coming up here on CBS News Bay Area, we are going to meet a Bay Area couple turning their own personal tragedy into a mission to help others. Their effort to make sure a trip to the beach does not end in disaster.
It was very clear to us on that same day that this happened because we were just unaware. We just didn't know the dangers of ocean.
This year, there have been almost 70 deaths from high surf, rip currents, and sneaker waves off our nation's coast. That's according to the National Weather Service. And a husband and wife from Fremont are making sure beachgoers know how dangerous the ocean can be. Sharon Chin introduces us to this week's CBS News Bay Area Icon Award winners.
Sharmista Chakraborty and Tarun Pruthi carry precious memories of their 12-year-old son, Arune.
Even from 6 months old, no one said he's cute. Everyone said he is a very handsome boy.
His life was soccer. He was enjoying his academics as well as his sports. And yes, he loved the beaches.
It happened yesterday at Cowell Ranch State Beach near Half.
But in January 2021, their family trip to the beach with Arune and his brother turned tragic. A big wave swept the family of 4 into the ocean.
The beachgoers saved some of us who also got caught in the rip by creating human chain.
Despite a search, Arune's body was never recovered. Carrie Smith of the San Mateo County Harbor District responded to the emergency.
There was an adverse day at the beach. There were several other rescues that day.
In their shock and grief, Tarun and Sharmista resolved to do something to spare others their pain.
It was very clear to us on that same day that this happened because we were just unaware. We just didn't know the dangers of oceans.
A few months later, they founded the nonprofit Arune Foundation. They educate school children about ocean safety, especially those who live inland and are less aware of how to protect yourself at the beach.
Never turn your back to the ocean. You just don't know what's coming.
And they equip beaches with potentially life-saving emergency rings. When the ring is thrown, the rope can extend 150 feet to reach someone trapped in the water.
I feel if there was a ring that day on the beach, someone could have thrown it at him and yeah, he could have been he could have been here.
Donations have funded about 30 emergency life rings, mostly along the San Mateo County coast. The goal is to install 100 of them. Tarun and Sharmista are also helping the San Mateo County Harbor District spread the word that the ocean, though beautiful, can be hazardous. So check the tides and conditions beforehand.
What they're doing is helping spread that message of awareness, and it's huge.
A message that can save lives.
We hope that it will be in their mind when they go to the beach next time.
So for providing ocean safety education and equipment, this week's CBS News Bay Area Icon Award goes to Sharmista Chakraborty and Tarun Pruthi.
Now you can nominate a community hero for a CBS News Bay Area Icon Award on our website, kpix.com/icon. Well, thanks for streaming CBS News Bay Area. I'm Ann Makovic. We're going to be right back with your first alert forecast and another look at your top stories.